Currently, it is 37 degrees here on the campus of Florissant Valley Community College. I'm Jell with your noon news update. In local news, a St. Louis man is accused of telling fellow passengers on a Metro bus that he had a bomb in the bag earlier this month. Syed Khan was charged yesterday with making a terrorist threat. Authorities say Khan was on a bus March 2nd near South Kings Highway Boulevard and South Van Veer Avenue when he told people aboard that his pack contained a bomb. Bomb-sniffing dogs found no explosives in the bag. St. Louis police are busy following a violent weekend. The Post-Dispatch reports 4 people were killed and 8 people were wounded in shootings across the city from Friday night through Monday morning. Police have made arrests in at least one of the homicides. St. Louis has recorded 38 murders so far this year. Ellsbury man is charged with murdering his father. An Ellsbury man is charged with murdering his father over the weekend. Brandon Spies is accused of stabbing Richard Spies. The victim was found dead Saturday night in the basement of a home in the 700 block of Lincoln Street in Ellsbury. Authorities say the discovery was made after the son confessed the murder to the local police station. In national news, President Trump reportedly spoke with Vladimir Putin over the phone today. NBC News is reporting that the call follows Putin's landslide re-election victory. So far, there's no word on what the two discussed. Meanwhile, Trump is set to host Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House today. First Lady Melania Trump will host tech leaders at the White House today to discuss cyberbullying. Today's meeting will bring in leaders from Facebook, Google, Amazon, Twitter, and Snap as part of her effort to address issues affecting children. Trump has previously expressed concern over negative social media interactions and what children are exposed to online. And Facebook is being investigated by the Federal Trade Commission. According to reports, the commission wants to know about whether the company violated rules governing the distribution of user data. Political analytics company Cambridge Analytica reportedly collected data from the profiles of 50 million Facebook users without their consent to help President Trump's campaign. And now, the weather. Let's see here. Just give me a minute. We're having some mild technical difficulties. Let's see. Yeah, things got off to a rocky start today. So, today it is cloudy. Wow, even my mouth is having trouble today. Cloudy with a high of 45, a low of 31. Tomorrow it will be sunny with a high of 50, a low of 31. Thursday, we're going to look at some showers with a high of 55 and a low of 40. Friday, cloudy, high of 54, low of 43. Saturday, rainy with a high of 53, low of 37. Sunday, mostly cloudy, high of 51, low of 41. Thankfully, by Monday, we'll have scattered thunderstorms, but the high will be 57, so that'll be nice. Looking at a high of 57 for Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday, we'll actually get back to the 60s. Finally. By the way, it's the first day of spring. You might not have noticed with the weather outside. Anyway, this has been Jell with your noon news update. I ask you to please stay tuned for GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. unless we're having other difficulties. But before that, here is a Women's History Month report, and we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with GameBabble Live. Thank you so much for listening to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. That was Curious the Cat Killer by Doze Marpool here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which is supposed to air every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. But sometimes we wind up running into some difficulties. Yes, doesn't it just figure? I just get back from a horrible illness, get the show back on the road, and then the following week, we wind up having the studio just be closed. But I'm back again now, and I put up an apology video on the GameBabble YouTube page, which is probably the best way to keep up with the show. Anyway, we like to kick things off with what games came out this week, what games are coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to research the anime too terribly thoroughly this week, but we still have something coming out March 25th. Ponyo. Anyway, let us get on with the show and talk about the new games this week. So, today, PlayStation 4, Assassin's Creed Rogue Remastered, Assault Gunners HD Edition, Attack on Titans 2, Audio Beats, which is a VR music game. I played that. I played the Hong Kong one. There's a stream on the YouTube page. Don't Bite Me, Bro. Floor Plan, also a VR game. Lunar Stone, Origin of Blood, also a VR game and really terrible. Again, played the Hong Kong version. There is a stream on the YouTube page. That one just made me laugh. It's really bad. Mahjong Gold, Minefield, Octahedron, RBI Baseball 18, South Park, The Fractured Butthole from Dusk Till Casa Bonita. Tekken 7 has the Noctis Lucis Calum DLC from Final Fantasy 15, so Noctis is now a playable character. Titan Quest, Velocity 2X Critical Mass Edition, and Where Are My Friends? Then tomorrow is World of Warriors, day after tomorrow, Ark Park, and then A Way Out Ni no Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom Day 1 Edition also comes out. Moving right along to the Xbox One. It also got Assassin's Creed Rogue Remastered, Attack on Titan 2, Lego Marvel Superheroes 2, Cloak and Dagger, which I assume is some DLC for that, Octahedron, RBI Baseball 18. Hey, Sea of Thieves was today. That's surprising. South Park, The Fractured Butthole, from Dusk Till Casa Bonita, Tekken 7 Noctis DLC, and Titan Quest. Tomorrow it gets The Count Lucanor and Where Are My Friends? And on the 23rd, A Way Out, MX vs. ATV All Out, and Western Press. On Nintendo Switch, today, Attack on Titan 2, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse gets its Switch port, along with a game called Swim Out. Tomorrow, Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja hits the Nintendo Switch. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue President Ronnie? Time to find out. And then the day after that is Arcade Archives Neo Geo World Heroes 2 Jet, Arcade Archives Moon Patrol, hello, Eat Beat Dead Spike-san, Gekido Kintaro's Revenge, which is very interesting. That's the GBA Gekido game. So I'm curious what the Switch port is. Manticore Galaxy on Fire, No Thing, Opus, Rocket of Whispers, Slayaway Camp, Butcher's Cut, and Soul Divide Sword of Darkness. Really? Is that Psycho? Yes, it's a Psycho port. Soul Divide actually got a PS1 release, but I think it got most of its content cut. It's a side-scrolling shooter with a fantasy theme. Anyway, 23rd, we get Castle of Heart as well. Moving on, 3DS gets Detective Pikachu on the 23rd, which is a very strange-looking game that features a talking Pikachu with a very deep voice. Looks interesting. And the PlayStation Vita got Velocity 2X Critical Mass Edition. So, how about next week? Well, next week, PlayStation 4 is getting X-Morph Defense European Assault, so I assume that's some DLC for that. Oh, Atelier Liddy and Suel, The Alchemists and the Mysterious Painting. I didn't know that was coming so soon. Bridge Constructor Stunts, Far Cry 5, Injustice 2 Legendary Edition, MLB The Show 18, MX vs. ATV All Out. So the Xbox One is getting that early. The 25th Ward, The Silver Case, Limited Edition. The Witch and the Hundred Knight 2. Trove Heroes. And, oh, egad. Code Realize, Bouquet of Rainbows, and Thimbleweed Park on the 30th. I did not know my birthday was coming that soon. Xbox One, what are you getting? Xbox One is getting X-Morph Defense, European Assault, Far Cry 5, Injustice 2 Legendary Edition, MX vs. ATV All Out. PixArk, a game preview version, Trove Heroes, and a game called Alteric. While the Switch is getting Atelier Lydian Suel, The Alchemist and the Mysterious Painting, Outlast 2, and on the 30th, Alteric, Redout, Shadowbug, Thimbleweed Park, and Tokitori. The 3DS will be getting The Alliance Alive, which is a Saga-inspired game. and the Vita will be getting Code Realize Future Blessings. As for anime in theaters, the only one I know is, hey, Ghibli Fest is back. Because of course it is. It feels like we just did this. Not complaining, though. Anyway, Ponyo will be in theaters March 25th, 26th, and 28th. It will be subtitled on the 26th, dubbed on the 25th and 28th. And that concludes our video game news and information and what anime that I know of are in theaters. I will now kick you back to the music, and then after a short break, we will dig into all of the news that I would have loved to have reported last week, along with some news for this week, and really get into our video game news and information promise. But until then, here's Comfortable by Mai Lee, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was Talkback by Dairy Boy Montana, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, Ferguson, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which is supposed to air every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m., and then things keep blowing up in my face. So I do highly recommend you check out the YouTube channel, which is, YouTube/user/GameBabble show, but you can just search GameBabble and you'll probably find something of mine. Put up quite a few videos. Most of them not episodes. I need to get back to that. Anyway, though, I'll certainly keep y'all updated there, but time for some news, and let's start with the freshest news. So, Dragon Ball FighterZ's first DLC characters will be Bardock and Broly, and we have a release date. They will be here March 28th. So, pretty soon. Get hyped for them. Moving on, Earth Defense Force 5 is certainly looking promising, though there's no sign of a U.S. release yet. No, they said it's coming. It's coming to the U.S. We're just waiting on a release date. They did say recently that they're releasing a new DLC pack in Japan. It's it's a new mission pack, more than 30 new weapons across the different classes, and there will be new enemy types. And they said that they're not going to implement roaches in Earth Defense Force 5 because they don't want to just focus on bugs. Earth Defense Force is about more than bugs. It's about simulating the being in a cheesy sci-fi movie experience. They need more tripods! Tripods are my favorite kind of enemy, other than kaiju. Shooting a rocket launcher at Godzilla is always great. But what I like about this, though, is it means that Earth Defense Force 5 is way more designed for DLC. And I know people are a little iffy on DLC, but Earth Defense Force is the kind of game where it can really work. Because if you've never played an Earth Defense Force, they generally dump you into a map full of enemies and then say, okay, have fun. And adding in, just a couple new enemies could add so many more missions to a game. I don't like the palette swap ones, but when they add in ones that actually have a different look and behavior, it can add a lot to the game. Like they said, 30 missions with that pack. And, that's something I'd be interested in. Moving on, though, let's talk Dragon's Crown. Because Dragon's Crown Pro is going to be released in Japan soon. I know Japan got their most recent patch for the PlayStation 3 and Vita version. You see, okay, where do we begin? Dragon's Crown is a side-scrolling beat-em-up RPG from Vanillaware, gorgeously hand-painted, if a bit questionable sometimes on character design. I know that was rather controversial, but yeah, Dragon's Crown came out on PS3 and Vita a while back, and now it's getting a PlayStation 4 port that's going to upgrade the game to being 4K. And what's really interesting is the PlayStation 4 release is going to be compatible with the Vita and PS3 releases of the game. It's going to be super crispy, and it's going to have some remixed music. As such, though, it is pretty much the same game, and that means that ahead of Dragon's Crown Pro's release, they're releasing a patch for the PlayStation 3 version to add the PS4 compatibility, and it will add a pile of new, just little nice features. Bags now can be renamed, items can be filtered by effect. When adventuring the player's talisman collection, current floor and floor reward can now be checked. Each setting value is now shown in character names, edit type, screen When resetting skills at the guild, deep pockets can be reset as well. If a skill is regained after a skill reset, the corresponding skill item will be automatically returned to the bag. The ability to batch sell items at Magic Show has been added. Damage display has been added to the option menu. Rune selection UI position has been added to the option menu. When editing type, you can rotate text by 180 degrees. Goods appearance rates for certain goods have been tweaked. Some of the enemy special effects in ultimate difficulty have been tweaked. The tutorial for certain characters has been improved. Camera behavior improved. Other minor display adjustments and functionality improvements were made. An unauthorized equipment bug occurring in certain circumstances has been fixed. A display issue with item prefixes has been fixed. Performance stability under certain conditions has been fixed. A bug where praying to increase funds was ineffective was fixed. But, obviously reading the patch notes, but, important thing, to make room in your save file for the ability to rename those bags, they are decreasing the number of skeletons that can be stored at the temple. It will be decreased from 32 to 28 with the patch. So, all skeletons stored in slot 29 to 32 will be deleted. So, if you have any skeletons there, you might want to either resurrect or dismiss them. And, also, Tin Giant, a company I've never heard of, is helping Nippon Ichi America with Ys 8, The Lacrimosa of Dana's PC port. This has been a saga. So, Ys, long-running Japanese action RPG series. Ys 8 was originally released on Vita. It got a PS4 port. And traditionally, Xseed has been bringing over the Ys games, and they generally do a really good job. However, this time, they decided to go with Nippon Ichi America to handle the U.S. release of Ys 8. And the reason they did this was because they wanted a PC port, and Falcom, ironically enough, didn't want to handle the PC port themselves of Ys 8. They wanted to release it on Steam. They didn't want to handle the port. Nippon Ichi said that they would do the port. Game comes to America, and the PC release gets delayed. They are having massive, massive technical issues with slowdown, which is surprising and a good example of just how specialized Japanese games can be. Because, again, this is a Vita game. This is not something that is going to push your PC to the limit. It is not high poly count. But they were having massive slowdown issues. Because you can't just take a Vita or PS4 game, slap it on a PC, and call it a day. You do have to fix the optimization. Japanese games, Japan is a very console-centric country, and their games tend to be designed around the strengths and weaknesses and limitations of the consoles. So when you just slap a PS4 game on PC without any proper optimization, it can be a mess, as a lot of Steam users have noticed with Japanese games. So Nippon Ichi has delayed this. They've been struggling with it. Meanwhile, fans were very pissed off because Ys 8 had a terrible translation where even things that were already in English were retranslated in dumb ways, like the word crevice became big hole. It was a really awkward and wonky translation, and fans who generally don't like Nippon Ichi America because they've done some pretty bad localization jobs complained to them, realized they didn't care, so they complained to the original Japanese company, to the point where the original Japanese company, Falcom, got pissed off and apparently called up Nippon Ichi, and they actually released a patch to completely retranslate Ys 8, which included rehiring the voice actors and getting them back in the studio to re-record the entire game because the entire translation was garbage. Nippon Ichi had to redo literally all of their work. Their entire job had to be done over. My mind is blown by that. And I appreciate the fact that they did that, but considering some of the screw-ups they've had in the past, I can only assume it was because Falcom had sort of forced their hand on that. Either way, they've still been struggling with the PC release, and this news about Tin Giant is good. I didn't know what Tin Giant is, but apparently it's, one of the people there is Rob Wyatt, who was known for his work on the system architecture on the Xbox and the graphic architecture on the PS3. He also worked with Insomniac and Naughty Dog. So, in short, they called in an expert to fix this. And he's like, yo, yeah, I found solutions for the performance issues, but you're going to need to upgrade to DirectX 11.1. And he removed the texture samplers being created on the fly and just made some tweaks. And pretty much what this means is that, hey, the PC port might actually be good. No guarantees. As for how good the game is, it's a blast. Once again, I did do a stream on my channel. The thing I really like, I didn't like the earlier Ys games because they were the kind of game where you just bump into enemies to attack them. But the more recent Ys games have had a massive focus on speed. And Ys 8 is no exception. Story-wise, whatever. But gameplay-wise, Ys 8 was a blast because if you try, you can just go so fast. Enemies can be taken out in like 3 hits. And they come in like little piles, and you whack a bunch of them, and you run really fast, and you dash through everything, and it feels great, just running through stages, and the music is just, it's the best. It's so the best. I've spoken at length about how much I like Ys Origins, and yeah, Ys 8, I don't think I like it quite as much as playing Origins with the Axe Girl, but Ys 8's really good. So, that's the newest new news. Into the older news, we had a Nintendo Direct the other week, and egad, there is a ton of stuff to talk about there, so we're going to save that until after the break. Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about. But let's get into some of the sillier things. Puyo Puyo is one of the first games recognized by the new Japanese Esports Union. Yeah, so Japan has decided, hey, we're going to try to promote esports in Japan. We've created an official esports league known as the Japanese Esports Union, and Puyo Puyo, a.k.a. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, a.k.a. Kirby's Avalanche, a.k.a. Puyo Pop, yeah, a.k.a. Quirks. Yes, that game, the one with the slime blobs that you match 4 of the same color and they disappear. That game? Well, the first ones they're recognizing as an esport, which is good because it's technically been an esport since 1997. Seriously, go on YouTube, look up Puyo Puyo Tournament. There is footage of the grand finals of a 1997 Puyo Puyo 2 tournament, and it is amazing. We got smoke machines, we got guys dressed as characters from the game, we have a girl in a bee costume, a huge audience all shouting out the combo attacks. It's a beautiful thing, especially because it is so old. It's from 1997, and seeing video game tournament footage of that game from 1997, it's just kind of magical. Moving right along, Galgun 2 will be coming to the West in April. And even more interesting, there is going to be a Dynasty Warriors movie made in China. And this is one of the few times I can really look at something and say, yeah, no, that should be made in China. It's Dynasty Warriors, based on Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I mean, literally a Dynasty Warriors movie. There have been numerous Romance of the Three Kingdoms movies, because the Romance of the Three Kingdoms is an old book based on ancient Chinese history, loosely. But this, no, literally Dynasty Warriors. It has the Dynasty Warriors logo, they play the Dynasty Warriors music, and the main focus here is that they are talking about Musou energy, which is the energy that the characters use to do crazy special attacks that send thousands of troops flying. There's a teaser trailer up. They're promising it for next year. It looks great. It looks like it's going to be a big-budget Chinese movie. And at first, I was like, I really don't care. And then, I watched the trailer, and they play the Dynasty Warriors / Lubu's theme song, and I'm just like, I'm watching this. This just looks too good. And I'm pretty confident China's going to get this right. They might know a thing or two about the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So yes, that is awesome. Moving further along, South by Southwest has happened, and at it, Sega did announce new Sonic things. The big one being Sonic Mania Plus, which will be a physical release of Sonic Mania, and it's going to have some new additions, including a 4-player mode, and the biggest news, Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel will be added as playable characters, and it is amazing how hyped people are for that. For anyone utterly baffled by these characters, they come from an old, weird arcade game called Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, which was 3-player and played with a trackball. They were technically the first side characters. Apparently, they actually predate Tails. But they are hyper obscure, especially Ray the Flying Squirrel, who I think has a really goofy-looking design. Mighty the Armadillo came back in Knuckles Chaotix, and he literally looks like Sonic as an armadillo. But Ray the Flying Squirrel, we have not seen him since Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, which most people didn't see. I only saw it because I've emulated it, and hey, there was a machine at Galloping Ghost, and I played it there. It was very hard. But, yeah, amazingly, people are very excited for this. Apparently, the characters were really awesome in the Archie comics when they brought them back. But more than that, like, they just have sort of a weird fan base due to their infamy as characters. One of the major things about that, especially Ray, because Ray is like looked at as the most forgotten Sonic character. So, some people are very excited about that. But you're probably wondering, but I already bought Sonic Mania. What do I do? Well, they have said that the new features will be released as DLC as well. A bunch of people are assuming free DLC. They are probably idiots. I am assuming that you will pay the price difference between Sonic Mania and Sonic Mania Plus. Don't count on things being given to you for free, people. It'd be nice if it was, though. It'd be nice if we got a good discount on it, too, since we already bought the game. But still, it'll be nice that it gets a real physical release. Moving on, though, there is also a new Sonic racing game with cars that has been teased. And it's very interesting. Apparently the font is the same as Sonic R, but Sega is saying that it is not a sequel to any existing Sonic game, any existing Sonic racing game, so it is not a sequel to Drift, it is not a sequel to All-Star Racing Transformed, it is not a sequel to Sonic R or Sonic Riders. There's been a lot of Sonic racing games. This is a new one, and that's going to be a tricky endeavor, I'm going to be honest, especially in cars. And I say this because Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed is one of the greatest kart racing games ever made. It is an utter masterwork created by a fusion of different racing game creation teams. Sumo Digital, the makers of Outrun 2, the makers of Blur, and the makers of Split Second all got together and combined elements of those games to make Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. It is utterly phenomenal. And I don't know how you top that. I have no clue how you just make a Sonic racing game and expect it to top that. In fact, from a personal standpoint, I would say they would have to bank on the characters if it's not going to be a sequel to All-Stars Racing Transformed, if it's not going to be made by Sumo Digital. I would say they'd have to bank entirely on having a very, very large cast of Sonic characters, so when everyone is disappointed by how it's not as good as Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, they'll still enjoy it because it has piles of Sonic characters. It's a thing I always go on about, because the Sonic series has 9 billion different side characters, and Sega needs to find a good use for those characters. They don't show up in places. There aren't really, it's not like the Mario sports games. And, hey, the Yakuza 6 demo is back. For anyone wondering, Yakuza 6 is coming out relatively soon, and they put a demo up on the PSN store, only to find out that there was a bug that allowed people to access the full game of Yakuza 6 from inside the demo. So they pulled down the demo, put out patches to prevent people from playing the full game on the demo, and now they have re-released the demo. Yeah, that was a bit of a mess. And one more news story before we go to break. Valkyrie Profile is being ported to iPhone and Android. I am very grumpy about this. To anyone unfamiliar, Valkyrie Profile is an utterly amazing action RPG, turn-based action RPG. It has a very interesting combat system where each character in your party is assigned to a face button, and then you hit that button to cause that character to attack, and you time it in order to do incredible juggle combos. If this sounds relatively familiar to you, a number of games have tried to copy this style, with the upcoming game Indivisible outright admitting that, yes, it is flagrantly inspired by Valkyrie Profile. See, there is a Valkyrie Profile 2 and a Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume, but all of them went off in different directions. Valkyrie Profile 2 wound up being way more RPG-ish and story-focused and less fun combo-y combat. And then Covenant of the Plume was a weird strategy game that still had that kind of combat, but also not quite. And Indivisible was like, we want something more like Valkyrie Profile 1. And I'm sitting here going, I'm a little iffy on Indivisible, and I wish people could play the original Valkyrie Profile, a.k.a. Valkyrie Profile Lenneth. It's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. It's an absolute blast with its side-scrolling dungeon exploration and crazy combo-based combat system. But the original PS1 release is ridiculously expensive. No one's going to play it on PSP, and now they're porting it to cell phones. Inevitably, the cell phone port will probably come to PC and some consoles next year, but it'll probably be a terrible cell phone port, like the Chrono Trigger one. Can you just do it right? Please, just put the game on the consoles and the PC. Just port it. Because Valkyrie Profile is it's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. And the fact that they're handling it this way makes me very sad. Anyway, I do believe it is time for a break before we get back to the ridiculous pile of news I've got here. So coming up next is It Works Both Ways by About Last Night here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse minds. Stay tuned and thank you. That was Live in the Moment by Portugal the Man here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. Welcome back. Time for more news. Looks like Lumines is coming back. It's going to be on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. If you've never played it, it is a puzzle game from the makers of Rez, where how you complete... It's sort of like Tetris, but the blocks are cleared in time with the music, and as they're destroyed, it adds to the music. It's really trippy and fun and addictive, and I love it. So I'm very happy to hear that is coming back. Also, Zone of the Enders, the second runner, Mars, will be coming to PS4 and PC in September in Japan. I don't expect the US release to be far behind that. That is a re-release of Zone of the Enders second runner, but now in 4K, and supposedly with VR support. They've shown VR support, but they didn't mention it recently, and I do worry. But they also showed that it should have Steam VR support, so I don't know, hopefully the VR support is still in there, because that's the whole reason why I'm interested in it. Anyway, this is GameBabble, your source for Penguin Coon Wars news, and we finally have information on the US release of Penguin Coon Wars. It will be released May 15th in both America and Europe, and it will be getting a boxed release for us. Yay! This is very good. So I'm happy to hear that. I really wish the game had a classic mode. But then again, maybe it does, and I just don't see it because of the sheer amount of Japanese text and the sheer amount of options. Actually, is the kind of game that would take a minute to translate. It kind of has a meaty story mode, as weird as that is. Moving on further, the Witcher series Geralt of Riviera will be coming to Soul Calibur 6 as its guest character. So there's the answer to your question. That's the guest character. And time for something stupid. Monster Hunter World is getting paid character re-editing, though there is a free re-edit ticket up. Now, there's a lot of people who look at this and go, well, yes, re-editing your character in an MMORPG generally tends to be a paid thing, and this is just cosmetic, so it's not bad. No. This is scummy. Why is it scummy? Because there's a reason people were demanding a character re-edit option in Monster Hunter World. See, Monster Hunter World uses a completely different character model in the editor screen than it does in-game. So you sit there and you spend hours crafting your perfect character, you make them look utterly gorgeous, and then you start the game and it looks like they got hit with a frying pan. And there's tons of comparison screenshots out there showing how messed up this is, and a bunch of people were demanding, hey, if you're going to do this to us, let us re-edit our characters so that way they don't look like a complete mess. And Capcom's like, I guess we could implement that feature. And now they have, and they're like, oh, but we're going to charge you money to do it every time you want to. That is a scumbag move. Especially because they still use a different character model in the character creator than they do in-game. Don't do that! The difference between the character creator and your in-game model is too huge. And no, it's not excusable. I'm sorry, because I've seen people try to make excuses where it's like, well, of course they wouldn't use the beautiful character creator model in-game. Then don't have it! Don't make this fantastic-looking character model that you're only going to see in the character creator. That's what's pointless. Piss me off. I don't even play Monster Hunter World, but it is a real scumbag tactic. Anyway, we were mentioning the Nintendo Direct last week, and it is a good time to talk about some of that. With the biggest news, of course, being there will be a new Smash Brothers this year with Inklings. And that's all we know. We don't know. Oh, we also know that it's going to have Breath of the Wild link in it. We don't know if it's a port of Smash for Wii U or if it's going to be a new game. And that has been the big debate. Port or new game? Port or new game? And a lot of people are really pushing for new game. They hope it's a new game. I hope it's a port. Why? Because Smash for Wii U is jam-packed with content. It has a ridiculous number of characters and a ridiculous number of stages. And if they just took that and added on to it, oh, that would be more than worth it. Especially because Smash for Wii U has the 8-player Smash mode, which is like one of the greatest additions to Smash Brothers ever. You're going to say, but when are you ever going to have 8 players over? That is a good question. But here's a better question. You ever play Smash and then you have that 5th player, the odd man out? Yeah. Sucks, don't it? Now you don't have to. You could play 5-player, or 6-player, or 7-player. That's the beauty of 8-player Smash. That's where it really works. Because the chance of actually having more than 8 people all waiting to play Smash is pretty slim, in small get-togethers especially. So by implementing 8-player Smash, you don't have to have any odd men out. It's wonderful. And then they had the Omega stages. Smash for Wii U had a lot of good stuff in it. It was a really solid game. And I'm concerned because it's only been 2 years since they released Bayonetta for Smash for Wii U. It's only been 2 years since they stopped work on that and might have started work on Smash for Switch. And that's the question, is that enough time to really top Smash for Wii U? It could be something in the middle where they use Smash for Wii U as a base and then build off of it to make something that seems like a new game but is only half a new game. But I did think about it. I found a way. I know I did talk about all this in a video, but still, I found a way that they could do a new Smash game for Wii U or for Switch this year. They do it Splatoon style. Like, you see, with both Splatoon and ARMS, the games came out kind of unfinished, especially Splatoon. When Splatoon came out, it was half a game. But over time, they released free patches and updates that finished the game and fleshed it out into more than a full game. Made it quite a meaty experience. And they could do the same with Smash. They could easily release Smash with just the core roster of characters and a few new additions, and then over time release all the other characters and stages and content to get it up to par and beyond Smash for Wii U. The only problem there is, when does the paid DLC start? At what point do we have to pay more than full price for the game? Because honestly, I am so fine with DLC characters. What I'm not fine with is getting an inferior game and then being charged to get more DLC characters. Thankfully, I think Nintendo knows this, and I kind of trust them to not completely screw us over. My trust, though, may be misplaced. We will find out. Moving on, speaking of Splatoon, Splatoon 2 is getting actual paid DLC, but in, like, a really nice way. See, Splatoon, generally the updates are free. But this time, there will be a new single-player Octoling story expansion DLC. A whole new campaign. I'm hearing it's going to have 80 missions, which the core single-player is only 25 missions. But thankfully, there is, like, a skip-level option if it winds up being too hard. Anyway, beating the story expansion DLC, it's going to be, like, super challenging. And if you beat it, you unlock the ability to play Octolings in multiplayer. And they can equip all the same outfits and everything. It looks really fun. I'm loving what I'm seeing. I'm actually intrigued by this Octoling story. So, yeah, I think I'm going to get this DLC. I'm pretty on board with it. Also, speaking of DLC-esque things, Solaire of Astora, a.k.a. Sunbro from Dark Souls, is getting an amiibo. Yep, because Dark Souls is coming to Switch, here's a Dark Souls amiibo. Enjoy! Meanwhile, Nintendo has announced some more 3DS games, including a port of Luigi's Mansion. But getting back to the Switch, Crash N-Sane Trilogy is coming to the Switch. Now, this is shocking people. What the heck? It's not PS4 exclusive. Sony, what, huh? You realize Crash hasn't been Sony exclusive for years, right? Starting with Wrath of Cortex, the fourth game in the series, after Naughty Dog stopped working on it, the series became a third-party series, and Wrath of Cortex was released on PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. In fact, the very last Crash game that came out, Crash Mind Over Mutant, before the trilogy, obviously, Crash Mind Over Mutant did not get a PS3 release. It was made for the Wii. Crash of the Titans and Crash Mind Over Mutant were both made for the Wii and ported to PSP and PS2 and Xbox 360. Crash of the Titans got a PS3 release. Mind Over Mutant did not. The best version of Crash Mind Over Mutant is on Xbox 360. So that's awkward, and that's a game that I actually really like. Moving right along from Crash N-Sane Trilogy coming to Switch. Okami HD is also coming to Switch. I think that's going to be a download, though. But the big news, and this is big for me, is Mario Tennis Aces. They teased this earlier, but most of the Direct was them talking about this, and it makes me so happy, because Mario Tennis is a phenomenal game. See, back in high school, I knew a guy who was this insanely obsessive Nintendo fanboy, and he admitted it, and he moved away. I kind of miss him. But he actually brought over Mario Tennis on N64. And me and all my friends, we looked at one another, and we were like, tennis? Well, whatever. I can play as a shy guy. I guess it'll be fun. And then we played it 4-player, and it was the most fun we'd had in a long time. It was a phenomenal 4-player game. And every time we were like, dude, bring Mario Tennis. We need more Mario Tennis. I picked up Mario Power Tennis on the GameCube, and though I was a little iffy on the super moves in it, hey, it was more Mario Tennis, now with better graphics. Mario Tennis was absolutely phenomenal. Unfortunately, ever since then, we've been getting screwed in Mario Tennis. The Wii, despite promises, did not get its own Mario Tennis game. Instead, they took the GameCube game, removed the GameCube controls, slapped in wonky waggle controls, and called it a day. Geez, even Nintendo themselves was doing garbage shovelware for the Wii. Following that was a 3DS release that simplified the game and dumbed it down to the point where there was almost no point in even playing it. And then on Wii U, we got Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, which played better than the stupid 3DS game, at least, but it barely had any content. There was one tennis court. There were barely any modes. The only point was that you could play online. It looked beautiful. It played great, but there was no content, and they charged nearly full price for it. It was a bit of a mess. I at least enjoyed that one, though. But Mario Tennis Aces looks to be them saying, let's make up for all of that. Because in the midst of all this, I didn't mention there was a Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance Mario Tennis game that had this full-fledged RPG mode, and, like, the Game Boy Color one was particularly interesting because you could take your customized character from that game and play them in Mario Tennis on N64 if you had the Game Boy Transfer Pack from Pokemon Stadium. Yeah, it was pretty nutty. But yeah, we haven't seen the full RPG mode in a while. Mario Tennis Aces is bringing back the RPG mode and putting it on console. On top of that, oh egad, they are going all in on the crazy mechanics, because now you can break your opponent's tennis racket. There's now this super power meter that lets you slow down time and do special shots where you do crazy backflips. And you can do a super strong shot that can break your opponent's tennis racket. But they can counter it. They can parry your attack and launch it back at you stronger than ever. So it becomes this huge risk-reward system. And it's all based on this power meter because, like, I think your racket breaks if you have no power. So if you're abusing your power meter to slow down time and do crazy backflips, then that makes you more vulnerable to having your tennis racket broken. It looks nuts, but just in case this winds up being a completely broken garbage feature, there is a classic mode that brings it back to N64 style. On top of that, thank freaking goodness the tennis courts are varied. One of the big problems with Mario Tennis is that the tennis courts were always really bland. There was like a classic Mario Brothers court in Power Tennis. I think there might have been a pretty okay DK Jungle court, but for the most part, the courts are really, really bland. But this time, they're actually interesting. I am so excited for Mario Tennis Aces, because I love Mario Tennis, and this is the most effort I have seen them put into a Mario Tennis game pretty much ever. So, I am hyped. I am very, very excessively hyped. And yes, it'll have an online mode as well. I look forward to that. And it'll even have a motion control mode. Like, if you want to play it Wii Sports Tennis style, you can take your Joy-Cons and swing them around, you know, if you want to. It's a nice bonus. So I am very happy about that. But now it's time for the weird and interesting news. I've mentioned in the past that I was very impressed by Saga Frontier 2, and that Final Fantasy Legend 2, technically Saga 2, is my favorite RPG of all time. But otherwise, I have a kind of on-off relationship with the Saga series, you know, like Romancing Saga, Saga Frontier, those games. I'm kind of iffy on the Saga series, but sometimes I love them, sometimes I'm I am intrigued by them. And one of the games the newest game in the Saga series was released on Vita a while back, called Saga Scarlet Grace. And they talked about kicking around doing a US release of it, but they knew no one would buy it on Vita. Well, good news, it is being ported to Switch and PS4 and PC. Now, they have not announced a US release for Saga Scarlet Grace, but they announced a PC release. That pretty much means there's going to be a US release. As I've said repeatedly on the show, Japan generally doesn't game on PC. They are a very, very console-centric group of people. So, if they are doing a PC port of Saga Scarlet Grace, it's coming to the States. And I'm pretty excited about it, because I want to give it a chance. I like the Saga series sometimes. It's hit or miss. Either they're complete garbage and I don't like them, or they're some of my favorite RPGs of all time. Like I said, Romancing Saga 2 was my favorite game last year. I loved it. Phenomenal. I can't stand almost any other Saga game. But I'm excited about Scarlet Grace. And perhaps the most interesting thing, I was watching someone talk about the game, and they mentioned a character named Paul. It's a playable character. His name is Paul, and he sells churros to build a tower to the gods. You can play as a churro salesman named Paul, who had a dream and has revealed that he needs to build a tower to the gods by selling churros. By the way, this is a completely 100% serious game. It is not a joke game. It is not silly. It's not Earthbound. It's a serious game, but we've got Paul the churro salesman. I'm in. Give me the game. I'm ready. I am absolutely ready. Oh, that looks like it'll be magical. Moving on, though. Oh, hey, we have more random news announcements. Actually, no, we're going to save that one for later. But we will mention the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yes, we got an update for it. There is currently a job listing for level planners. We're 3 years into the development of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, one of the most anticipated games of all time. And they're looking for level planners. Oh boy. Oh boy. But they admitted they have the pre-planning stages done and have some of the core work finished for Episode 1. Please remember, Final Fantasy VII Remake will be episodic. This game's never getting finished. We will get Episode 1 on the place. Everyone's predicting it now. Episode 1 will be a PlayStation 5 release. There will probably not be an Episode 2 or 3. Episodic games rarely finish themselves. And I'm really curious. I want to know how Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to play out. Because I'm telling you right now, people are going to be like, I know they're going to screw it up. It's going to come out. People are going to not like the changes. And the question, and then I want to know if they're going to pull Final Fantasy 15 and spend years going back and trying to fix all of its problems. They might. Because they probably would want to fix Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode 1 before making Episode 2, if they ever did. Like, I'm curious to see how how it all plays out. So, that's going to be a thing, but I will say to everyone excited about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, curb your enthusiasm. Because it ain't coming. Just don't expect it. I don't know what to say. It's, whoo. Yeah. So, we're going to take a short break right now, kick you back to the music. When we come back, we will talk about the trials and tribulations of Omega Labyrinth Z. But until then, here's Psycho by Post Malone featuring Ty Dolla $ign, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you. That was Give Love by Andy Grammer featuring Lunch Money Lewis here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show that airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Anyway, now I would like to take a moment to salute one of the bravest video game translation crews I've ever seen, P-Cube, a UK-based video game translation company. I don't know if they actually publish the games. I don't think they do, but they do the translations in English. And they got some nads. They mostly made a name for themselves by releasing Galgun Double Peace in the West. And will be doing Galgun 2 as well. This is very surprising. Galgun is a very ridiculous game. And the original game didn't come to America. They didn't think they could release it in the West. And P-Cube came up and they were like, no, we'll release it. It's fine. And so it very much surprised everyone involved that they could release Galgun like that, that they would do a translation, that they had the guts to do a translation. It got a very stealthy release, though. You pretty much had to order it off of Amazon or through Rice Digital. It wasn't something you could just find at GameStop, but it still got released. It's interesting. They're a UK-based translator, but they release things in the States. Very, or at least they can contact people who can release things in the States. But why are they so brave? Well, that's because one of the games they're translating, Omega Labyrinth Z, is being denied a rating in the UK. What this means is that though a UK version will exist, it cannot be sold. Essentially, this means you can import it to the UK, but you can't sell it. And it may not be stocked in stores or shared publicly with friends, and it may run afoul of obscenity codes and get you in police trouble. So I don't know what kind of consequences you could have for owning Omega Labyrinth Z in the UK, but you could get in trouble with the police for owning this game because they have found its content to be too obscene, which is kind of silly. But the game is going to be released everywhere else in Europe except Germany, and it should still be getting a US release as well. Well, what makes this interesting is the translation company, P-Cube, is in the UK, the country where you can get in trouble with the police for owning the game. So what in the heck happens to the translation crew now, since they're continuing the translation? Could at any time the police just come into their office and arrest the entire staff? Or does that only apply to the finished product? Can they can they almost complete the translation except for a period and then pass it off to the publisher to add the period and put the translation in the game in order to get around this? I don't know, but it's pretty freaking weird to have a game that is somewhat illegal to own in the country that you're translating it in. Omega Labyrinth Z is going to be a very, very, very strange case. So what kind of game is it? Dungeon crawler. Randomly generated dungeon, like a proper roguelike. You know, a mystery dungeon game. The one where when you take one step, all the enemies take a step. That kind of game. It's one of those, but slightly risque in its content. It's the kind of game I looked at importing once, and I was like, nah, it's just a minor gimmick. Most of the fun's gonna be like in the story and text and how ridiculous it is. So when they said, hey, we're gonna do a US release, well, now suddenly I'm interested. And now that they're like, oh, this game is too obscene for the country that is translating it, okay, well, now I have to own it. That is just ludicrous on a whole new level. So I'm very curious to see how this all plays out for them. But, yeah, weird situation that P-Cube has found itself in. I don't know what to say about that. Other than, wow, that's weird. P-Cube has released some, like, non-lewd games as well. A couple of indie things and stuff. But those are the ones that raise the most eyebrow. It looks like that's becoming P-Cube's bread and butter, is releasing incredibly risque games that other companies won't touch with a 10-foot pole. They are the last resort translators. When Xseed won't touch it, you go to P-Cube. But Xseed will touch a lot of things. And I'm glad for that. Because I am all about, I'm very much about releasing even the most ridiculous games like that. I don't like it when a game is Japan only. And, I don't like it when it's like, oh yeah, no one's gonna touch this game. It's only released in Japan. Unless there's like a really good reason, which is also why I'm so happy about Asian English releases. In case you're new here, Southeast Asia tends to sometimes enjoy their games in English. And the PlayStation 4 is a region-free console. Because of this import market, they've started releasing Asian English games. An Asian English release is, it's an Asian version of a game, but it's in English. And a few of the early ones had really terrible translations. But they have drastically improved, and it has opened up a lot of things. Most notably, and I talked about this last show, Super Robot Wars. See, the Super Robot Wars series is a long-running strategy crossover series of all these different Super Robot anime. Like Evangelion, Macross, Gundam, of course, all sorts of different Gundams. Excuse me. And it takes them and it mashes them together to have all these different characters team up to fight enemies. The reason that series came about was because in Japan, Bandai owns the video game rights to all these different giant robot series. Mazinger Z, Getter Robo, UFO Robo Grendizer. The majority of the series are owned by Bandai, and then the series got so popular that even stuff not owned by them, like Macross and Evangelion, they'd just give them permission to put them in Super Robot Wars games, because that's how you make it as a Super Robot series, or a mecha series in general, is you get into Super Robot Wars. Once you make it into Super Robot Wars, it's a big thumbs up. And of course, though, these games couldn't be released in America because of licensing issues. And, yeah, they couldn't release it in the States. There were too many licensing issues, and, all we could get was the original generation games, which are all entirely original mecha and characters. So, yeah, we were kind of screwed out of those games for a while, and, the games have a sizable cult fan base in the States. But, thanks to Asian English releases, they are able to release those games in Asia, in English, where there isn't this problem, and then we can just import it and get through that little legal gray area. It's fantastic. I mean, what you gonna do? It's not getting a U.S. release. We're just importing it. What? It's not illegal to import things. Giving the developer money, it's all good. And yeah, I'm bringing that up because, end of next month, another Super Robot Wars game comes out. We got our first English release of a Super Robot Wars game with licensed mecha in it, with Super Robot Wars V last year, and this year we've got Super Robot Wars X, which is more fantasy-themed. I think they said that one's going to have Code Geass in it. But it's also going to have Keith Courage and Alpha Zones. Yes. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm generally pretty excited about Super Robot Wars in general. It makes me happy that this is a loophole that can be used. But sadly, there's still some games that aren't using that, like A City Shrouded in Shadow. There is such a demand in the States for an English release of City Shrouded in Shadow. And nothing. They need to do an Asian English release of that game. What is it? Well, it's out in Japan. It's a PS4 game where you play someone trying to survive a giant monster attack, i.e. like Godzilla. It is a surviving a Godzilla attack game. But as like a bonus, it has a bunch of licensed characters in it. Like Ava Unit 01 can attack the city, or like some giant anime girls can attack the city. And I think there's like Ultraman and stuff like that. Like they have all these different characters that can attack the city, and honestly, it seems like they could just release it in the States by just removing those characters, but it would be removing a lot of characters. So, yeah, it's a thing. See, it's made by Granzella. Godzilla, Ultraman, Gamera, Patlabor, and Neon Genesis Evangelion are all present for this. So you can survive a Gamera fight. That is a thing. But unfortunately, it has no U.S. release because of licensing issues, and there's so many people who are so very interested in it. So that is definitely a shame, and I really hope that they wise up and do an Asian English release. It has Bandai Namco that's the publisher, so they could do it. Maybe that actually has issues even in Asia or something. Oh, yeah, it's a spiritual successor to the Disaster Report games. Good times. Anyway, we are going to I am going to once again take a short break, kick y'all back to the music. So up next is Pull Up and Wreck by Big Sean and Metro Boomin featuring 21 Sav. Here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. When we come back, we'll talk Dynasty Warriors 9, the complete mess that is. So stay tuned, and thank you so much for listening. That was First Love by Lost Kings featuring Sabrina Carpenter here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So, before we get into the Dynasty Warriors 9 talk, I have a little bit of new information, namely, Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection will be launching May 29th. I'm pretty excited for this. It is a big old bundle of Street Fighter games being released for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Steam, and Nintendo Switch. It contains Street Fighter 1, Street Fighter 2, like Super Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Alpha. Let's see, here's the full list. Street Fighter 1, Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, Super Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Street Fighter Alpha 2, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 3 Second Impact, and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, with online play for Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Street Fighter Alpha 3, and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Disappointingly, no online play for Alpha 2. That actually annoys me. Alpha 2 is... I like Alpha 2 more than Alpha 3. There's actually quite a few people who do. I kind of don't like Alpha 3. Anyway, so that'll be May 29th. I'm super excited to pick it up on Switch, even though pre-order-wise I'm getting screwed. Yes, they have revealed that each platform is getting their own pre-order bonus, with the Xbox One getting the best one. PlayStation 4, mind you, it's all circumstantial. PlayStation 4, if you pre-order Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Edition, you get Ultra Street Fighter 4, because they re-released that on PlayStation 4. On Xbox One, pre-order, and you get both Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition and Ultra Street Fighter 4, due to the fact that the Xbox One is backwards compatible with those games on the Xbox 360. Steam also receives Ultra Street Fighter 4, if you pre-order it, while the Nintendo Switch has no pre-order bonus, but only the Switch contains Super Street Fighter 2 The Tournament Battle, which was a thing I remember playing at Tilt as a kid. Super Street Fighter 2 The Tournament Battle was the goofiest thing. What it was you actually had 8 different Super Street... Or was it 4? It was 4. You had 4 different Super Street Fighter 2 arcade machines all linked together. And you put in your coins, and you played, and after each round it would say, this player moved to this machine, this player moved to this machine, and then you switched around different machines and fought different people. So they're actually going to emulate that on the Switch version, and they can't really do it on any of the other versions. It's kind of pointless, but also kind of cool, because I don't know any other way you would play that. I'm getting it on Switch still. Mostly because having that many Street Fighters in the palm of my hand is gonna be awesome. Oh, exclusive tournaments for Switch. The Nintendo Switch version 30th Anniversary will contain exclusive recreation. Oh yeah, there it is. If you local wireless play, you'll need 4 Nintendo Switch systems and 8 controllers to start a tournament, which is perfect for a group gathering. CPU will take control of remaining spots. Once each match begins, the winner or loser will be placed in their respective brackets. Yeah. It's, that is goofy and awesome and makes me kind of happy. I remember that. Mostly because I remember that mode. And, like, even though I never played with more than 3 people on those machines, I loved it just because it was it was so weird at being told to play musical chairs on an arcade machine. Anyway, let's talk about Dynasty Warriors 9. I love the Dynasty Warriors series, that is no secret. Although I've been suffering from some Warriors fatigue, but Dynasty Warriors 9 is sort of dusting that off just with how much of a mess it was. See, a lot of people look at the Dynasty Warriors series as a kind of stale series. Every game is exactly the same, but they do actually try to mix it up every now and then, especially when they're doing a generational shift. When they released Dynasty Warriors 6, that was the first Dynasty Warriors game designed for PS3 and Xbox 360. And it was terrible. It was absolutely awful. They tried changing what default weapons characters had. They tried changing how the combat system worked, and it just wound up being a way worse game. Well, Dynasty Warriors 9 is the first Dynasty Warriors game made exclusively for PS3, Xbox One. And once again, they're mixing things up, and I knew it would be a mess from the moment they announced it, because they said, hey, it's going to be a free-roaming open-world Dynasty Warriors. And I'm like, how the heck is that going to work? This is going to be a mess. And big surprise, it is. I think a lot of people have heard this, thanks to the fact that Jim Sterling is a relatively well-known person. And, he has been bashing the game pretty mercilessly. And I was like, well, I'm not surprised. However, a friend of mine actually picked the game up and let me give it a spin. And you know what? It's not as bad as Jim Sterling says it is. But I still wouldn't pay full price for it. Thinking about kicking around a rental, maybe trying to do a video on it. But Dynasty Warriors 9 is a certified mess. I mean, for starters, it doesn't even run well. If you're playing on a non-PS4 Pro, the screen is actually like letterbox. It does not take up your full screen. It has a big black border around it. It's rendered at a lower than normal resolution. And it runs, honestly, at a really choppy frame rate. It's a lower than it should be frame rate. Sub 30 FPS. So it's not the best. It doesn't run all that well. Now, if there's one thing I can count on Koei Tecmo for, especially Koei, it is immediately backpedaling when things go wrong. At the start of the game, you only get to choose from the main generals for each army. And then as you clear each chapter, you unlock all the characters in that chapter. That was the way it used to work. However, now, they actually released a patch, so that way, as soon as you clear the tutorial, like the little tutorial mission, you beat up one general, you go to town, you instantly unlock everyone in that kingdom. You can get 80 characters unlocked in like 15 minutes. You'll just have all 80 characters available to you. You even get the Kingdom of Jin, which is supposed to be late game, but do the tutorial with Wei, and it'll unlock all the Wei and Jin officers. On top of that, the only ones you really have to unlock now are the others. Your Lu Bu, your Jiao Chan, your Zhurong. They still need to be unlocked, and I assume it's through the regular method of clearing those respective chapters. Now, the one thing the game gets very right is that all of the characters have a semi-unique story mode. And this is relatively achievable due to the free-roaming open-world nature of the game. A lot of the missions are just generic missions. You talk to a townsperson, they tell you to go do this. So it doesn't matter what character you're approaching them with. And you can set it up where it's like, okay, here's a cutscene that's only going to be seen by these 5 characters. This cutscene's only going to be seen by 3 characters. This cutscene will be seen by 10 characters, though. And then you throw in a few, unique cutscenes. Like, there's always a unique one introducing your character. And you have a relatively unique story mode for every character. And that's nice. That is a feature that, if I'm not mistaken, we haven't really seen since Dynasty Warriors 3, and was remembered as being one of its best features, was the fact that every character had their own story mode and ending. So that's nice. And once I got into the game and started exploring the world, there were certainly cool things about it. Namely the towns. I love the towns. They actually look pretty nice. They've got tons of people walking around and talking about the events that are happening, and people to give you side quests and missions. There's crafting, and there's items to get. And it's like, oh, this is actually really nice. I'm kind of on board with this. Yeah. And then you try to get to the main game. And this is where everything falls apart. Dynasty Warriors 9 could have been a good game. But it couldn't have been a good Dynasty Warriors game, I don't think. And a large part of that is just the Dynasty Warriors isms clash with the general game design of Dynasty Warriors 9. Dynasty Warriors is all about fighting thousands of enemies on a big, sprawling battlefield. But unfortunately, since they made this big, huge open world, it's a bit too sprawling. You go out there, and the world is empty, barren of pretty much anything. And then maybe you'll find this little cluster of, 20, 30 enemies. But unfortunately, your army is too big. Usually, you'll have 20 or 30 of your own troops fighting the enemies. They'll get mixed in with the enemies, and they'll get in the way of you beating up enemy soldiers. I actually wish I could fire my entire army and just conquer China myself. They're useless and they get in the way, wasting frame rates. It's really frustrating, to be quite honest with you. And, they do have these big battles full of troops, but unfortunately, thanks in large part to your overly successful army, most of them will ignore you, and you can kind of just walk past a lot of the troops and assassinate the general and call it a day. The combat system has also been changed, and it has pros and cons. Standard Dynasty Warriors combat is you do your regular combo with square, then you press triangle to do a special move, and it's different depending on where in the combo you do it. Square, triangle, square, square, triangle, and square, 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 triangle all do 3 different special moves. That's the way it classically works. This time they've decided to mix it up. You still have your square combo. Pressing triangle will do a special attack. But for the most part, what you do is you hold one of the shoulder buttons, I think it's R1, and then each of the face buttons will do a different special attack. One's a launcher, one's a knockdown, one is like a knock away, and interestingly, every character has these same 4 attack types, so it does make them a little samey. The twist-ish thing is called flow attacks. Basically, after you do one of these special attacks on R1, if you keep pressing square, you will follow it up with a unique combo. So you do a launcher, and then you start hitting square, and you'll immediately fly up and do a big crazy air combo. And initially, this seemed like I was starting to get into it. I was playing as Xiao Qiao, and I was like, whoa, hey, I did the attack where I create a tornado, 5 feet in front of me. That's pretty cool. How do I do that? Okay, it's the follow-up to the knock away attack. Okay, and then I kept having trouble activating it. Because if your attack doesn't hit just right, it doesn't go into the flow attack. Way, way, way too much is context sensitive, and so sometimes doing the exact move you want to do doesn't exactly work. Thankfully, the game does have both jumping and dodge rolling, and though you can't jump cancel quite as well as you could in Dynasty Warriors 8, you can jump and immediately get out of the end of an attack, and you can dodge roll through a lot of things, and that does make the combat way more enjoyable. Locking onto a general, dodge rolling away from their attacks, launch and mashing square to do big flashy combos feels pretty okay. A little heavier than the classic Dynasty Warriors, but not terrible. It works, but it doesn't work as well as it has in the past, and it doesn't feel like it has the depth that it used to. Because, believe it or not, Dynasty Warriors 8, you could actually pull some pretty crazy stuff. But, yeah, in general, just not quite working out. And that is disappointing. And in spite of the backpedaling, in spite of Koei Tecmo recognizing this problem, they've announced some of the DLC packs. They will be releasing more weapons as DLC and more characters as DLC. I looked at that and I immediately got angry, because one of the most interesting new characters, they've revealed that Dong Zhuo has a granddaughter, who has a really crazy design. She has blonde hair in buns with, spiked, pretty much spiked scrunchies, and she's in, a gothic Lolita outfit, and I'm like, okay, that's an interesting character. I want to know her story. Well, she's going to be sold as part of a ridiculously overpriced DLC pack, though she's already in the game, and even though everyone uses generic movesets. Thanks. Speaking of which, geez, there is more to talk about. Yes, everyone is using generic movesets. You can equip any weapon on any character, and a lot of characters lost their classic weapons. Zhang He does not have his claws. There are definitely way less movesets than what we're used to in Dynasty Warriors. Still better than Dynasty Warriors 6 in that regard, but it is lacking in weapons, especially the crazy ones. They kind of half-grounded it in reality. Not as much as they tried to with Dynasty Warriors 6. They still have the ring blades, at least. But they're really not going all in on the weapons. But it doesn't matter, because the combat is kind of bleh. And then, cripes, then there's the problem of voice acting. Dynasty Warriors 9 might have the worst voice acting I've ever heard in a video game in a unique way. Because I've heard a lot of bad voice acting. I own Castle Shikigami 2 and Chaos Wars. Dynasty Warriors 9 is worse in the worst way. Not only does it not have a Japanese audio option, but the dub that they have, they went with non-union people. And they just didn't care. And this is an interesting thing, because recently, a lot of voice actors unionized, and they were trying to get better working conditions and stuff. And they tried to have this campaign called, Voice Acting Matters. And it was kind of a mess, because there's a lot of people who really, really love their voice actors, but unfortunately, not having your favorite voice actor in a game is not a deal breaker for a lot of people. And someone tried to, put together an RPG and hire all these professional voice actors as a huge selling point, but the RPG just looked bland. It was a really hard sell. Dynasty Warriors 9 was what Voice Acting Matters needed. Because they flagrantly cheaped out, hired non-union voice actors, and none of them gave a crap. Even bad voice acting is better than what Dynasty Warriors 9 has. Because the line, there's no acting. That I shouldn't call it voice acting. It's just voices. Because they're literally reading monotone from a script. There is actually a part where I think it's Yuan Shao says, "Oh no, oh no, when did you get here?" But it's actually read as, "Oh no, when did you get here?" Completely dry and flat. No emotions. It's actually kind of funny for Zhao Yu, at least, because he talks like a robot. But yeah, most of the characters have little to no emotion. It could honestly use with more overacting. It could honestly use with some Dynasty Warriors 3. Seriously, it's astonishing. At least it's listenable, I guess. But I just sit there with my jaw on the floor the entire time going, this isn't acting. It literally... Have you ever been in a class and the teacher asks someone to read a section of a book? Especially a play, and it's read this section of the play, and they're not an actor and they don't care. It's what it sounds like, where they stand up and they're like, I feel like, to be or not to be, that is the question. It's that bad. I cannot... my words have run out. The voice work in Dynasty Warriors 9 is not working. Anyway, I just realized we need to take a quick break, so I'm going to kick you back to the music. Here is Underground Muse by Jordan Terry, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind, and stay tuned. So we can wrap up the show. Thank you so much for listening, but here's Underground Muse. Please. That was No Complaints by Metro Boomin featuring Offset and Drake here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Once again, I am your host, Jell, and before the break, we were talking about Dynasty Warriors 9, and I figure it is a good time to wrap that up. So, on top of the fact that the free-roaming open world is incredibly empty, the game runs very poorly, and the combat is way too context-based, it does have one more very frustrating problem. And to many, this is the biggest problem. As you might have guessed, since it's having trouble running single-player, there is no co-op, neither online nor split-screen, and that matters. A large chunk of the Western Dynasty Warriors fan base got into the games because they were some of the few games to offer two-player split-screen co-op play. And they continued doing this for a very long time. It's only recently that they've started releasing games that don't have multiplayer. Cripes. I know Warriors All-Star was lacking in multiplayer, which was actually the reason why I didn't buy it. And, what was that other one? What else? There was one other one that lacked multiplayer, and Dragon Quest Heroes. Dragon Quest Heroes has no multiplayer. And come to think of it, the first one didn't have multiplayer. Dragon Quest Heroes 2 has 4-player online co-op that I haven't yet sunk my teeth into. But yeah, it doesn't have split screen. I'm like, what the heck? Split screen's important. We actually quite miss it, and that's, final straw for Dynasty Warriors 9. No split screen at all, not even in some limited capacity. Heck with that. Indeed, I was actually worried that maybe Dynasty Warriors was starting to abandon split screen, and I'm like, that's one of your best features, but thankfully, they have not. Because Fire Emblem Warriors on the Nintendo Switch does indeed have 2-player split-screen co-op, and I got to play that, and oh my god. Like, to anyone who's like, oh wow, is the Dynasty Warriors series over? Is this the big screw-up? Nah, we fine. Go play Fire Emblem Warriors instead, which I'm kinda in love with, because that may well be one of the most strategic and challenging and interesting Warriors games I've played in a long time. It's clearly based off of Hyrule Warriors, but what makes it interesting is that they put in the Samurai Warriors 4 character switching mechanic, which that's one of the interesting things about the Dynasty Warriors series is when you're a longtime fan like me, it's like, yeah, all the games play the same, but they all put in new features and experiment in new ways, and when a feature is successful, they run with it. And in Samurai Warriors 4, you actually played as 2 separate characters who could run to separate ends of the map, and you could switch between them, and you'd switch different positions on the battlefield. Fire Emblem Warriors takes that to the next level, with you being able to switch between 4 different characters and command 8 different characters on the pause screen through a grid-based system using the old Fire Emblem sprite. So it's like Fire Emblem, it's like, yeah, you move here, you move here, you move here. And then when you're on the battlefield, you can actually walk up to one of your generals and team up with them, pair up with them, just like you can in Fire Emblem. And they'll follow behind you, and you'll raise your relationship points with them, and you can do team-up attacks with them. And I love the Fire Emblem-isms they put in there. But one of the big Fire Emblem-isms, permadeath. And putting permadeath in Dynasty Warriors is a twist. Now, it's not 100% permanent unless you're playing on, like, max difficulty. You can resurrect them at the shrine for a ridiculous sum of money that you will have to save up for. So, the game is kind of nasty in that respect. And when you play 2-player co-op, it's actually both players playing as all 4 of those characters. You're just switching between that same pool of 4. But, since it has permadeath, your co-op partner better be on their game and be aware of the weapon type strengths and weaknesses. That is important. Because you can get one-shotted if you go up against someone who you're weak against. It can be nasty. It is a very, very mean game. And I think I kind of like it. But the big thing is it has 2-player split screen. And I'm glad to see that. And that sort of got me thinking about other things, because, speaking of the way that Dynasty Warriors games tend to have features that cross over between the games, I would say Dragon Quest Heroes 2 is Dynasty Warriors 9 done right. Because that one actually does have a free-roaming open-world kind of thing, but it's actually full of enemies to fight. Because the way Dragon Quest Heroes 2 is set up is that you have to move from one battle stage to the next by traversing, effectively, a world map full of monsters to fight and side quests to undertake, because it's trying to be like Dragon Quest. And then, when you get to a city or a dungeon, it goes into a more traditional, stage-based fight sequence. And it's like, that is actually really, really neat. And on top of that, it also has the whole hold R1, hit the different face buttons to do different special attacks. But it has that number 1 mixed with the traditional square, square, triangle type combos. And number 2, the different special attacks are actually different for each character, because that's how they did the special attacks and magic system in here. And it has the jumping and the dodge rolling, and it runs at a decent frame rate. Yes, Dragon Quest Heroes 2 is a better Dynasty Warriors 9. Almost entirely. It's kind of funny. Also, interesting note, in the off chance someone says, I kind of want to play Dragon Quest Heroes 2 now. Interesting side note, though. One of my complaints with it is that they didn't add enough new characters. I really wanted them to add more, and some characters actually got quote-unquote cut. I say quote-unquote because, come to find out, if you have save data from Dragon Quest Heroes 1, any character that's not in 2 becomes unlocked. Basically, the wives from one of the Super Nintendo Dragon Quests, I forget if it was 5 or 6, aren't in here, like Bianca. Bianca's not in the game unless you have save data from Heroes 1. Pizarro from Dragon Quest 4 is also, you gotta have data from the first game. And of course, all the original characters from the first game. They do come back as bonus unlockable characters if you have save data from the first game. So I'm very happy to see that. But speaking of the Warriors series, that was sort of my last piece of interesting information, is the fact that they have just announced Warriors Orochi 4 will be coming out this week. Looks like it will be using assets from Dynasty Warriors 8. I'm very happy to see a new Orochi, because they tried to do, like, kind of a new Orochi with Dynasty Warriors All-Star, or Warriors All-Stars, but Warriors All-Stars was lacking the 3-character switching, and it had a small character roster. It generally was found to be very disappointing to most of the people who actually played it. So I'm happy to hear a proper Orochi 4 is coming, because the Warriors Orochi series is one of my favorites. If you're unfamiliar with Warriors Orochi, it's the asset dump series. That was the original idea, actually, because when they released Dynasty Warriors 6, they were like, oh, hey, we don't get to recycle our assets from Dynasty Warriors 3, 4, and 5 and Samurai Warriors 1 and 2 anymore. Let's take everything we've done and put it together. So it was Dynasty Warriors meets Samurai Warriors with a few extra original characters, and it had this tag team mechanic where you could switch between 3 different characters and stuff, and they just kept building on that. I'm super happy to hear they're doing it again. Like, Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate has over 200 characters, because they're literally just copy-pasting data from Dynasty Warriors 7 and Samurai Warriors 3. So I guess this one will be 8 and 4 then. And yeah, I'm excited about having the tag team switching mechanic back, because that was super fun, because you could tag to different characters mid-combo. I like the fact that it has more fantasy, crazy storylines. I love some of the characters they've introduced. I'm really hoping they're able to keep all the new characters they introduced in Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate, especially because Ultimate introduced Tamamao no Mai, and I didn't really get to see how Daji meeting Tamamao no Mai played out. Which, if you're confused by that, because I'm really nerding out about this, Daji and Tamamao no Mai are both fictional characters. They're sort of mythological characters. One from China, Daji, and one from Japan, Tamamao no Mai. They have almost identical stories. In both cases, they are evil fox spirits who take the form of a beautiful woman to seduce an emperor and bring the land to chaos. They're pretty much the same character, and when they put in Tamamao no Mai, I was like, I want to know how Daji reacts to this. I never got far enough in Ultimate, because I'd already played the regular version of Warriors Orochi 3 to really find out how that played out. So, I'm kind of excited to see more of how that plays out. And I really hope they get in some Warriors All-Stars characters. Because Warriors All-Stars had some interesting character additions. It's just, it's kind of, But if you're copy-pasting data to make Warriors Orochi 3, why not? So we will see. That'll be in America before the end of the year, keeping up with our totals. Because the silly thing about about the Warriors series, and the reason why it does get a lot of flack, is that they tend to release 3 to 5 games a year. We're on track for that. Let's see. We got Fire Emblem Warriors, check. Dynasty Warriors 9, check. The Switch re-release of Hyrule Warriors, check. We're going to be doing a Switch version of One Piece Pirate Warriors 3, check. And let's finish off the year, perhaps, with Warriors Orochi 4 and Check and Double Check. That is that's how this series goes. And it's one of the things I liked, because this happened with Dynasty Warriors 6 as well. I remember that game came out, and I was like, this is a pile of garbage. And then Dynasty Warriors Gundam came out, and I was like, I'll play this instead. Oh, nice. I like this. This isn't garbage like Dynasty Warriors 6 was. It's kind of ridiculous. I'm so glad I didn't buy that game. That same friend bought Dynasty Warriors 6. And I apologize to him. But though it's not my fault, I still feel bad that he wound up buying that pile of crap. I would say 9 is better than 6. By a sizable margin. Some people disagree, but yeah, I'd rather play 9. I'm actually a little excited to give it a rent and spend a longer amount of time with it and do a video on it. But I've personally been sidetracked by my favorite Warriors game, Strike Force. Dynasty Warriors Strike Force was a PSP game following Dynasty Warriors 6 that kind of tried to be Monster Hunter, except everyone goes Super Saiyan and flies around. It's really weird. And it got a PS3 and 360 port, and it became it became pretty much my favorite Warriors game, because once you figure out how it plays, the combat in it is actually super deep. And it was like the first one to not have split screen, because it was a port of a PSP game, but it had 4-player online. And it was super fun. And recently I just got curious, and I said, I wonder if the servers are still up. Turns out they are. 8 years later, the servers for Dynasty Warriors Strike Force are still up. No one is playing, at least not on PS3. But it did mean I could call up a friend of mine, good old Horseplay, and we were able to play some of that co-op. There is a stream on the YouTube page if you want to see that game in action. It was the first time Horseplay played, so I introduced him to the game and the mechanics, and we start playing it, and good times are had, and I might have accidentally convinced a third person to purchase the game. So if our time zones ever sync up, I'm hoping to play 3-player in that. I'd like to bring back one of my video series called The Warriors Report and do Dynasty Warriors 9 and Dynasty Warriors Strike Force. So that's the reason I've started playing that again. And now I'm importing a copy of Strike Force 2. Because that was one of the only Warriors games to not come to America. Of course, the sequel to my favorite one. Thanks. I would love a Dynasty Warriors Strike Force 3. You have no clue. But enough fanboying out about the Dynasty Warriors series. I always recommend that everyone should play a game in the series and then be well aware that they're going to burn themselves out, because pretty much everyone loves their first Dynasty Warriors game. And then they realize that it's the same thing over and over again 5 times a year, and they go, yeah, I think I'm good. It's the Madden of Japan is my nickname for it, but they do it more than Madden, but they mix things up to their credit. I like seeing how these games evolve and grow, but I was even burnt out, because I would have picked up Warriors All-Stars if it had split screen. I was excited about Warriors All-Stars, but then they said no 2-player co-op, and I'm like, I'm out. Done. Nope. Not enough characters. No split screen. But anyway, I thank you all for listening to me. It is time to wrap up the show, but I hope you join me again next week for more GameBabble Live here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Our show airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m., and I hope to bring you more interesting and fascinating and weird video game news, and probably fanboy about another random series. We will certainly see how it all plays out. But we will get there when we get there. Until then, here is Light My Body by David Guetta featuring Nicki Minaj and Lee. Here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week. And stay tuned to this